Evening all, and welcome back. Today we're revisiting the Yemen UAP video that made waves during a congressional meeting on September the 9th, 2025. You know, the one when George Knapp presented and the one AARO officially labelled as unresolved. At the time, the SEPI Agency released analysis on September 20th, suggesting the object was a UAP struck by a Hellfire missile, deploying 3 defensive decoys.
Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, this is debris. My friends, this is not debris. These are like missile flares. These are decoys. So this UAP is deployed these things, which is why it travels with it.
But we were wrong. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. First things first, getting it wrong isn't a failure, it's part of the process. When you're dealing with ambiguous footage, classified systems, and high speed engagements, mistakes are going to happen. What matters is that we learn, we refine, and we improve our understanding. That's how fact based real analysis actually works. So let's recap. Our initial assessment was that the video showed a UAP being hit by a Hellfire missile and that the 3 objects trailing behind were defensive decoys deployed by the actual craft. That interpretation made sense based on the limited data we had at the time, and it aligned with how some advanced aerial systems behave. But something didn't sit right with me for many months. And so, after deeper review, additional imagery, and cross checking with known weapon signatures, we now believe the footage shows something very different and far more conventional and boring. The object wasn't a UAP, it was a HAB, a high altitude balloon. And the munition wasn't an explosive Hellfire, it was an R9X Ninja Blade missile, a kinetic variant designed to eliminate targets without explosives, using deployable blades on impact. Those 3 decoys? They weren't decoys at all. There were 3 payloads suspended beneath the HAB, and they flipped up after the R9X struck the soft exterior of the outer layer of the balloon. Once you know what you're looking at, the behaviour matches perfectly. We felt compelled to do this video to make the correction, and it's not about embarrassment, it's about accuracy. What this shows is that even agencies, analysts, and investigators can revise their conclusions when better evidence comes in. That's how science works. That's how intelligence analysis works. And that's how we avoid turning misinterpretations into myths. That said, I do have 2 issues here. Firstly, did Arrow really know what it was? And did George Knapp know that? Or did they really not work it out? Both scenarios raise significant problems for me. Let's take a closer look at the footage again for full breakdown. Let's go through frame by frame, look at how HAB payloads are configured, and show exactly why the R9X explanation fixed the data. If you want a deep dive, stick around, it's coming. First of all, just a little about what HABs actually are. So that stands for High Altitude Balloons. They're used by different nations as cost-effective versatile platforms for intelligence gathering, advanced scientific research and communications. They operate within the stratosphere, typically between 60 to 100,000 feet. They fly higher than commercial or military aircraft, but lower than satellites. This unique position allows nations to loiter over specific geographic regions for extended periods without consuming large amounts of fuel. So as we already mentioned, these are HAB-ISRs, so Intelligence, Surveillance and Reconnaissance craft. And because they are much lower to the ground than satellites, their onboard optical cameras and synthetic aperture radar can produce much sharper real-time images. And yes, all the major nations have them: the US, the UK, and of course, China. So okay, let's get into this. Now, as you can see, we've got a infrared view of this object. Now, the first thing you're going to notice if we zoom in is it's not balloon shaped, is it? It's kind of like a pill shape, I'd say. But don't be too hung up on that. The infrared's not going to give you the defined shape. And to prove that, let me just bring in the missile itself. Here we go. Here comes the missile. Now the missile is a long, slender device, but you can see there it looks a bit blobby. So we're not going to really worry too much about the shape of the object itself. It's not pill-shaped. It's just the way it's rendered on the infrared camera from the Reaper drone that's above. So that's another thing. These HABs can fly between anything from 20 to 120 thousand feet, really. Where Reaper drones have a ceiling level around 60 to 80 at most, at tops. I think it's more 60, to be fair with you, but we don't need to worry too much about that, because the HABs actually do lower altitude to obviously get higher resolution images of what they're looking at, and to also catch the airstreams, the current, so to take them in the direction they need to. So they do go up and down. So it's not a anomaly to think, well, how is the Reaper drone above the HAB, which generally can go a lot higher? So we can rule that out as being a problem. It's not a problem. It's very plausible that the Reaper drone is above the HAB. So as we get closer, it's going to play in real time very quickly. Missile comes in and strikes there. Now notice that the missile has not detonated. It's not a high explosive one, because if it were, there'd be a big flash at this point here, and the whole screen would go blank for a wee minute, and then it will just be gone. There'd be none of this, there'd be none of that either. So we're not looking at the high explosive version of the Hellfire rocket. There are multiple versions of the Hellfire, and this one is the Ninja Blade one. So this lets out these 6 blades at the side once it's impacted a solid object, and that's quite important. HABs are made of 2 layers. It has an outer layer and an inner layer. And the outer layer is filled with the lighter gas, like the helium, which keeps it floating. And the inside layer is actually filled with air. And that adjusts. So it gets bigger when it needs to lower, and it gets smaller when it needs to go higher, if you can imagine that concept. So basically, they're both very soft to the touch, as it were, almost like material-like. So the Hellfire comes in, it makes an impact because there's a reaction. Let's have a look at that reaction. Let's go first frame. There's a bit of, can't really tell what's happened, but it's skimmed off. But this has changed shape. So it's no longer the pill-shaped. It's kind of warped into a different shape, and now we're starting to see artifacts coming up. So what I'm proposing is that these are the 3 payloads which are beneath the high-altitude balloon that have kind of whiplashed up. And that's why, looking down in it, you see them dragging behind. So there's a balloon, there's its payload. They're all on the same tether, by the way. Okay, they're all on the same piece of string. String is probably not the technical wording. It is probably tether. So they're all banging around on there now, and they're in and out of shot. Remember, it's going quite fast. And also the drone's going quite fast too. So the speed, it looks very fast. So I'll just play it backwards and then play forwards. It all appears to be going very fast, but this is the motion parallax effect in action. A bit like when you drive a car and the bushes next to you look like they're going fast, but the background landscape appears to be going quite slow. When something, even a bird would look like it's going fast if it's been filmed above from a fast-moving object like a Reaper drone would be. So here's the payloads coming up and being dragged. They're now being dragged. This is warping around. It's changing shape. So anyone that's going, oh, this is it's changing shape. It's it's not. It's where the balloons reacted to the close encounter of a Hellfire rocket, which it should count itself very lucky. Not many things survive a Hellfire rocket. So that carries on. If we just hit play on that and zoom out to the original, the camera tries to track it. Now you may see coming up now. There's an image to the side of it. Let's go back just a few frames there. Do you see that small dot just there? And it disappears again, and there's a bit of a blur. I think this is where you find that the balloon itself is just trying to regain composure and carry on. And it does carry on. I mean, how long for, I don't know. Now, the Ninja Blades may have been deployed and may not have been deployed. I'm going to bet that they probably didn't get deployed because the target is not tough enough. It probably didn't even register. It got the target because that's how the targeting system works. It knew where the object was, But to its surprise, it hit the object and seemed to be invisible to it. It clearly wasn't invisible, but it was so soft that the rocket just didn't detonate. It didn't register the fact that that was a target, and therefore probably didn't even deploy its blades whatsoever. So that's what I am proposing is the scenario. We'll just wind back here and zoom out a little bit more. Let's drag that there. Look very closely. Here comes a Hellfire rocket, makes the impact, and now there's an immediate response, a reaction. And then the payloads come flying up. Now they've been dragged by the balloon, and they will end up disappearing once they get the composure back, because they are around about 100 feet separated, by the way. They're not just within a couple of feet of themselves. I believe the tethers are a good 200 to 300 feet in length, maybe even longer. I've not seen one physically myself, so I don't know, but I do know that they are around about 100 feet separated, just so they don't clash, and because things like this will happen. They don't want them clashing together and smashing to bits. I mean, this may have been damaged. They may have clashed. I mean, these two look pretty close. They may have clashed and cause a problem for the operator. Speculation who that'd be, and that could be any nation. But this may not necessarily been a spy balloon either. It could have just been one of the weather things or something to try and find natural disasters. Apparently they make them for that purpose too. Don't know how they work, but that's for the different purposes. So that's the analysis. Is it a UAP? Well, it clearly was to AARO, but strangely to an organisation like myself, which we considered amateur and non-funded, definitely not getting 10 to 20 million like AARO are getting per year. I wish, but we can tell what it is, and AARO, you didn't. So, as I've already alluded to, why? So you're either not really great at what they're doing, which would surprise me, because they're not stupid people, or this was a deliberate act of misinformation. Being wrong isn't the problem. Refusing to update your understanding is. Thanks for watching, and remember, we ask the questions you deserve and we demand. Take care. And if you have anything to report, we'd love to hear from you. Please visit our website